In this video, we'll show how to assign a Keynote file to a project. You'll see how to assign Keynote values to objects in the model, how to add Keynote tags to components in a detail section view, and how to add text notes when keynotes are not appropriate. The Keynote is a parameter available on most object types, and it allows a value to be assigned from an external Keynote file. The Keynote file is a text file that can be modified to suit each project and are normally based on standard building codes. Assigning keynotes and placing keynote tags on views allows us to have consistent notes for an object throughout the project, which can be changed or edited globally via the keynote parameter or by editing the keynote file directly. I have the exercise file, Add Keynotes open, and we're looking at the floor junction detail view, which is in need of some notes to complete the detail. First, we'll take a look at the Keynote settings. So from the Annotate ribbon tab, on the tag panel here, we'll click on the Keynote drop-down and then pick Keynote settings. And here at the top of the Keynote settings, we can see the Keynote file that's associated to this project. And we could click Browse and then browse to a different Keynote file for this project. However, this is a standard file that's supplied with Revit, and we'll stick with it for this project. I'll click the View button here, and we can see the contents of the Keynote file. And here we can see that it's split into key values and Keynote text. And if I expand out one of the values here, so we'll expand out the Division 9 finishes. And then we have sub-values in that, so I'll expand the plaster and gypsum board division here. And then within this, the gypsum board. And then we can finally see a long list of keys for different thicknesses and specification of gypsum board. And these are the keys that we can assign to the objects in our project and can be displayed on individual views using the Keynote tags. I'll click OK to close down the Keynote file here. And then I'll click Cancel so as not to make any changes to the Keynote settings. Now let's pick on the retaining wall here at the bottom. And then from the Properties palette, we'll click Edit Type to access its type properties. And looking in the Identity panel here, we can see the parameter for Keynote, and it currently doesn't have a value assigned. So I'll click on the blank value here, and now from the button that appears, we can click on this to open up the view of the Keynote file. So now we'll find the key that we want to assign onto this wall. So I'll expand out the concrete division here, and then concrete cast in place, and then the structural concrete. Now as we scroll down the list of keys here towards the bottom, we can see that we have a key for a 12-inch cast in place concrete wall. So I'll select this one and then we'll click OK to assign this onto the wall type. And now we'll click OK again to close its type properties. So now we'll go to the Annotate ribbon tab, and from the Tags panel here, we'll click on the Keynote drop-down and we'll pick the Element Keynote tool. Looking at the type selector, we can see that we have three options for the Keynote tag here. So one is just the key value, the number only, and then we have the text only, and then the one we'll choose here is to display both the key and the text. Now looking at the options bar, we can see we have the option for Free End selected, which means we can click on the object and then draw a leader line away to locate the Keynote tag where we want it. So now we'll move our mouse over the concrete wall that we just edited, and we can see the preview of the Keynote as we go over this. So we'll click to place the leader, and then we can draw this away, and then finally place the text in the view. And we can see that now displaying the number and the text of the Keynote that we assigned to the wall type. So now we'll go back to the type selector and we'll select the Keynote text type. And now we can click on the plywood flooring here and then draw the leader line away and place the note down. And we can see that that just displays the Keynote text and not the number. So now we'll go back to the type selector and choose Keynote number only. And now we'll pick on the timber stud at the bottom of the wall here. And now as we draw this away and place it down, we can see this is just displaying the key value that's assigned to that timber stud. So we'll go back to the type selector and we'll swap it back to be the Keynote text and number type. Now I'll pick on the joist here at the edge of the floor, and then we'll draw this away to place this Keynote down. And now we'll go over the anchor bolt just here, and we can see that this has 2 question marks, so we'll pick it and draw the leader line away to place the Keynote. But now as soon as we've placed it, it brings up the view of the Keynote file, and this is for us to choose a Keynote to assign onto the anchor bolt. So I'll expand out the metals division here, and then we'll expand the metal fastening subdivision. And now as we scroll down the list of keys here, we can see that we have some keys for hooked anchor bolts, and we'll choose the 5/8 hooked anchor bolt. And then we'll click OK, and we can see that's now been filled out on the Keynote tag. I'll click Modify to finish placing the keynotes. Now if I go and select the anchor bolt, and from the properties palette here we'll click Edit Type to view its properties, and here we can see in the Keynote parameter that we've got that Keynote value assigned into the object itself, even though we applied it via the Keynote tag. So I'll click OK to close down the type properties. And now looking at the wall plate that we have placed in the view, this is actually using the same component as the timber joist. And if I select the tag that's attached to the timber joist, and then looking at the Modify Keynote tags, we have our tool to add and remove hosts. If I click on this, first we can see the joist that's highlighted as the original host, but now we can click on the wall plate to add this in as a secondary host. And we can see now that that adds a second leader line from the same tag. Looking up at the Modify ribbon here, we have an option to merge leaders, so I'll click on that, and we can see that that tidies up these 2 leaders. And now we can just use the drag controls here to make these look a little bit tidier for us. So that completes placing all of the keynotes in. So now we need to place some text in the view that we cannot use with keynotes. So to do this, we'll go to the Annotate ribbon tab, and from the text panel, we'll click on the text tool. Now looking at the type selector, we can see that we have some different text types here, and we currently have the 330 seconds architectural text type selected. And looking at the Place Text ribbon, we have options here to place with leaders with 1 segment, 2 segments, or curved. We'll click the 2 segment leader. Now we'll click down here at the edge of the topography here, and then draw the leader line away. And we'll type the note in Site Level Varies around the building. And then when we click to finish that, we can see that we've added that note in at the end of that leader line. We'll come back to the type selector, and we'll change this to be the 1/4 inch text. Now we don't need a leader line from this, so we'll go back to the Place Text ribbon and choose Without Leader. And now we can click in the bottom right corner here, and we'll type in the note basement to indicate that this is the basement area of the building. And now we'll go back to the type selector, and we'll change it back to the 330 seconds architectural text type. And then we'll just click to place a note up here, and this note will read Finished Floor Level. However, we do actually want a leader on this, so I'll click Modify to finish placing the text. And then we can select it, and looking at the Modify Text Notes ribbon here, we see we have options to add leaders, so we'll click to add a left side straight leader. And now we can use the drag controls here to drag the leader into place and adjust the shoulder of it. Now looking at this leader, we can see that it has a different arrowhead to the Keynote tags here, so whilst it's selected, we'll click Edit Type on the Properties palette. And now looking in the Graphics tab here, we've got the leader arrowhead, and we can see it's arrowhead 1 at the moment, so let's click on this, and we'll change this to be the arrow open 90 degree 1/16, and then we'll click OK, and we can see that that's now updated on both of those pieces of text, and we've got the same arrowhead as the keynotes now. Now looking at the plywood sheathing component here, we can see this actually has the wrong keynote on it, as it should say plywood subfloor rather than plywood sheathing. So I'll select the plywood component here. Now from the properties palette, We'll click Edit Type to access its type properties. And here we can see the Keynote parameter, and we need to change this. So let's click on and then open up the Keynote file with the button that appears. And we can see the current Keynote as the plywood sheathing. And just beneath this, we can see the correct one, which gives us the plywood subfloor. So I'll select this and then click OK, and then click OK once more. And we can see now that that's updated on the Keynote tag here to show us the plywood subfloor note. And that completes adding the notes to this detailed view.